At my dad's birthday, everything seemed normal, until my 7-year-old daughter called me on the phone and said, "Get out. Now." When I asked what happened, her voice shook as she repeated, "Get out of the house." I obeyed, and 3 months later they were begging me to forgive them. Look, I need to tell you something that's going to sound completely insane. 3 months ago, my 7-year-old daughter saved my life with a phone call, and I still don't know if I should thank her or be terrified of how she knew what she knew. It was Dad's 72nd birthday. Nothing special planned, just family dinner at my childhood home, the kind of obligatory gathering where everyone pretends we're closer than we actually are. My wife Sarah had been acting weird all week, jumpy and distracted, but I chalked it up to work stress. She'd been pulling late nights at the marketing firm, coming home smelling like someone else's cologne, but hey, office buildings are full of people wearing cologne, right? I'm an idiot sometimes. Or maybe I was just choosing to be one. The house looked exactly like it had when I was 12, same faded wallpaper in the hallway, same creaky third step on the stairs, same smell of my mother's lavender potpourri mixed with decades of Sunday roasts. Mom had gone all out with decorations, streamers and balloons like Dad was turning 7 instead of 72. It was sweet in that suffocating way that family gatherings always are. My daughter Emma was being unusually quiet, sitting in the corner of the living room with her little hands folded in her lap. She kept staring at Sarah with these intense brown eyes, my eyes, actually, which made the whole thing more unsettling. Kids that age aren't supposed to look like they're solving complex equations in their heads. "Emma, sweetheart, why don't you go play with your cousins?" I suggested, nodding toward the chaos of kids running around the backyard. She shook her head slowly. "I want to stay here, Daddy." Something in her tone made my stomach twist, but before I could ask why, Dad launched into one of his endless stories about his Navy days. You know the type, every family gathering needs at least 3 stories about how tough things were back in his day. I found myself nodding along while mentally calculating how long until we could politely leave. Sarah had positioned herself near the kitchen, chatting with my sister Linda about some reality TV show I'd never heard of. She kept checking her phone, though. Quick glances when she thought no one was looking. The kind of glances that set off alarm bells in the primitive part of your brain, the part that kept our ancestors alive when saber-toothed tigers were still a legitimate concern. "David, you okay?" Mom asked, appearing beside me with a plate of those little sandwiches she always makes. "You look distracted." "Just thinking about work," I lied. The truth was, I felt like I was watching everything through thick glass, present but disconnected, like my body knew something my brain hadn't figured out yet. The afternoon crawled by. Dad opened his gifts with the enthusiasm of someone who'd rather be napping. Sarah laughed too loud at Uncle Rick's awful jokes. Emma remained glued to my side, occasionally tugging on my shirt sleeve for no apparent reason. Around 4 o'clock, things took a turn toward the surreal. I was helping Mom clear plates when Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked pale, almost gray, like she'd seen something that had drained the color from her face. "Daddy," she whispered, "can I have your phone?" "What for, sweetheart?" "I need to call you." The words hit my ears but didn't make sense. "Call me?" I was standing right there. "Emma, I'm right here. What do you need to call me about?" Her little face crumpled with frustration. "Not now, Daddy. Later. When you're not safe." The temperature in the kitchen seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom stopped scraping plates. Sarah, who'd been laughing with Linda in the living room, went suddenly quiet. "Emma, what are you talking about?" I knelt down to her level, searching her face for clues. Kids say weird things all the time, but this felt different. This felt important. She glanced around the kitchen nervously, then leaned close to my ear. Her whisper was so quiet I almost missed it. "Uncle Rick isn't Uncle Rick." Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone, slipping out of the kitchen like smoke. I stood there staring at the empty doorway, trying to process what had just happened. Uncle Rick isn't Uncle Rick? What kind of cryptic nonsense was that? But when I looked through the kitchen window into the backyard, I saw Uncle Rick talking on his phone by the fence, his back turned to the house. There was something about his posture, the way he kept glancing back at the house, that made my skin crawl. He'd been my dad's brother-in-law for 20 years. I'd known him my entire adult life. So why did he suddenly look like a stranger? The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of forced normalcy. We sang happy birthday. We ate cake. Everyone pretended to be having a wonderful time while the air buzzed with unspoken tension. Emma stuck to me like glue, her small hand clutching mine with surprising strength. As we were getting ready to leave, Sarah announced she had to run back to the office. "Just for an hour," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Big presentation tomorrow." "On Sunday night?" I asked. "You know how it is." She kissed my cheek quickly, too quickly. "Emma and I will see you at home." But Emma shook her head violently. "I want to go with Daddy." Sarah's smile faltered for just a second. "Sweetheart, Mommy has too." "No." Emma's voice carried a finality that surprised all of us. "I'm going with Daddy." There was a moment of tense silence. Sarah looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Emma's expression stopped her. It was the look of a child who knew more than she should, and it was terrifying on a 7-year-old's face. "Fine," Sarah said tightly. "I'll see you both at home." The drive home was quiet except for Emma's soft humming from the back seat. She was singing something I didn't recognize, a melody that sounded older than her years. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, she was staring out the window with that same intense focus. "Emma, what did you mean earlier about Uncle Rick?" "He smells different," she said matter-of-factly. "Different how?" "Like he's pretending to be someone else." Kids say the strangest things, but they also notice details adults miss. Uncle Rick had been acting differently lately, quieter, more watchful. I'd attributed it to him getting older, but maybe Emma was picking up on something more subtle. We got home around 7. Our house looked exactly the same as when we'd left that morning, red brick colonial, white shutters, perfectly manicured lawn courtesy of our landscaping service. But something felt off. The front door was slightly ajar, which was weird because I distinctly remembered Sarah locking it before we left. "Stay in the car for a minute, sweetheart," I told Emma. "No, Daddy. Don't go in there." The urgency in her voice stopped me cold. "Why not?" She unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed into the front passenger seat, her face serious beyond her years. "Because they're waiting for you." "They?" "Emma, who's waiting for me." Instead of answering, she pulled my phone from the cup holder and held it out to me. Her small fingers were shaking. "Give me your number, Daddy." This was getting too weird, even for a 7-year-old's overactive imagination. But something in her eyes, a deep, adult-like knowledge that shouldn't have been there, made me comply. I watched her carefully input my number into my contacts under Daddy Emergency. "When it rings," she said, "you have to answer right away. And you have to do exactly what I tell you to do." Before I could respond, she pressed call. My phone buzzed in my hand. The caller ID showed Daddy Emergency. I stared at the screen, then at Emma, then back at the screen. She was calling me from my own phone. The logical part of my brain wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but the primitive part, the part that had kept my ancestors alive, was screaming at me to listen. I answered. "Emma? Daddy?" Her voice sounded different through the phone, more distant and urgent. "Get out. Now." "What?" "Emma, you're right here with me. Get out of the house." But I wasn't in the house. I was sitting in my car in the driveway, staring at my daughter who was somehow calling me from the same car. None of this made sense. "Emma, I'm not in the house. I'm right here with you." Her voice shook as she repeated, "Get out of the house." That's when I realized she wasn't talking to present me. She was talking to future me. Somehow, impossibly, my 7-year-old daughter was warning me about something that hadn't happened yet. I looked at the front door again. Still slightly open. Still wrong. "Emma," I whispered, "what's in there?" But she'd already hung up. She sat back in the passenger seat, suddenly looking like a normal 7-year-old again, tired and a little confused. "Can we go get ice cream, Daddy?" I stared at her for a long moment, then at our house, then back at her. Every instinct I had was telling me to start the car and drive away. But this was my home. My life. You don't just abandon your life because your daughter makes a weird phone call. Except she hadn't made the call yet. She was going to make the call. Future tense. Which was impossible. "Ice cream sounds good," I heard myself say. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. As we drove away, I saw a shadow move past our living room window. Too tall to be Sarah. Too broad to be anyone I knew. We went to that little ice cream place downtown, the one with the hand-painted cow sign and the teenage employees who always seemed mildly annoyed to be there. Emma ordered strawberry with rainbow sprinkles, same as always. I got coffee because I needed caffeine to process whatever was happening to my reality. She ate her ice cream in careful, tiny bites, like she was buying time. "Emma, who was in our house?" "Bad people," she said without looking up from her cone. "How do you know they're bad?" "Because they want to hurt you." The matter-of-fact way she said it made my blood turn to ice water. Why would anyone want to hurt me? She finally looked up, vanilla ice cream dotting her upper lip. "Because you found out." "Found out what?" But she was done talking. She finished her ice cream in silence while I sat there trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. What had I found out? I was a software engineer for a mid-sized tech company. I wrote code for inventory management systems. I lived a profoundly boring life. Who would want to hurt me? My phone buzzed. Text from Sarah, "Where are you? Just got home and you're not here." I stared at the message. If she just got home, who had been in our house earlier? Who was the shadow in our living room window? I texted back, "Out with Emma. Be home later." "How much later?" "We need to talk." Something about those words made my hands shake. We need to talk. In my experience, that phrase never preceded good news. "Soon," I replied. Emma had finished her ice cream and was now drawing patterns in the condensation on the window with her finger. Little geometric shapes that didn't look like anything a 7-year-old should know how to draw. Emma, where did you learn to draw those? She glanced at her finger art, then back at me. I don't know. They just come out. The shapes looked almost like code. Binary sequences, maybe. Or coordinates. But that was impossible. Emma barely knew how to use a computer mouse. My phone rang. Unknown number. David Harrison? The voice was gravelly, unfamiliar. Yes? You need to come home. Now. Who is this? Someone who has your wife. You have 30 minutes. The line went dead. Emma was watching me with those two knowing eyes. That's them, isn't it? I nodded, unable to speak. Don't go home, Daddy. Emma, they have your mother. No, she said quietly. They have someone who looks like her. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at my daughter, this small person who somehow knew things she shouldn't know, who could call me from the same phone she was holding, who drew code patterns without understanding what they were. Emma, what's happening to us? She reached over and took my hand. Her small fingers were warm and solid and real. I don't know, Daddy. But we have to be very careful. 25 minutes. I had 25 minutes to figure out how to save my wife from people who might not be people, in a house that might not be safe, based on the warnings of a 7-year-old who seemed to know the future. The smart thing would be to call the police. But what would I tell them? My daughter called me from my own phone to warn me about something that hadn't happened yet? They'd think I was having some kind of breakdown. Maybe I was. Emma, I need you to be very honest with me. Do you know who those people are? She nodded solemnly. Can you tell me? They're the ones who took the real Uncle Rick. My blood turned to liquid nitrogen. What happened to the real Uncle Rick? I think he's somewhere dark, she whispered. Somewhere cold. I closed my eyes and tried to think. Uncle Rick had been acting strange for weeks. More withdrawn, different mannerisms, even his laugh sounded off. But he looked like Rick, sounded like Rick when he spoke. How could someone not be Rick while still being Rick? Unless they were very, very good at pretending. 15 minutes now. I needed to make a decision. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found my neighbor Jerry's number. Jerry was a retired cop, still built like someone you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley, and he owed me a favor from when I'd fixed his computer last month. Jerry? It's David from next door. I need help. What kind of help? The kind where you bring that service weapon you definitely don't still have. There was a pause. That kind of help's going to cost you more than computer repair. Name your price. Explanation first. Full truth. I looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. So I told Jerry everything. The weird phone call, Emma's warnings, the shadow in our window, the threatening call. All of it. When I finished, there was a long silence. Kid, Jerry said finally, either you're having the world's most elaborate psychotic break, or you've stumbled into something seriously bad. Either way, you shouldn't handle it alone. So you'll help? I'll meet you at the corner of Oak and Maple in 10 minutes. And David? Bring the kid. If she's seeing things you're not, we might need her eyes. The drive to Oak and Maple took 5 minutes. Emma sat quietly in the passenger seat, occasionally giving me directions even though I knew the way. Turn left at the blue house, Daddy. I was going to turn left. I know. But now you're sure. Jerry was waiting in his old pickup truck, wearing a black jacket that probably concealed enough firepower to invade a small country. He got out when he saw us, moving with the careful economy of someone who'd spent decades in dangerous situations. This is Emma, I said as he approached. Jerry knelt down to her level. Hello, Emma. Your dad tells me you're pretty good at knowing things. She studied his face seriously. You're not pretending to be someone else. No, I'm not. Can you tell when people are pretending? They smell wrong. And their eyes don't match their voice. Jerry glanced up at me with raised eyebrows. Kids got good instincts. That's exactly what we taught undercover officers to watch for. So you believe her? I believe something's wrong. Your house has been under surveillance for 3 days. 2 unmarked vans, rotating shifts. Professional setup. My legs went weak. 3 days? Why didn't you tell me? Figured it was federal something or other. You work with computers, right? Thought maybe you'd access something you shouldn't have. Jerry stood up, scanning the street with professional paranoia. But when kids start making prophetic phone calls, it's time to pay attention. What's the plan? Jerry pulled out his phone and showed me an aerial view of our neighborhood. Our house was marked with a red pin, surrounded by several blue pins. Those blue pins are escape routes. We're going to approach from the back, through the Henderson's yard. Emma stays in the truck with the radio. He handed her a small walkie-talkie. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you tell us immediately. Emma tested the radio. Jerry? Can you hear me? His radio crackled. Loud and clear, sweetheart. Remember, you're our early warning system. We left Emma in Jerry's truck with strict instructions to drive away if things went bad. She hugged me tight before I left, whispering something in my ear that made my blood freeze. The woman in there isn't Mommy. But Mommy's still alive. Jerry and I made our way through the Hendersons' backyard, moving quietly through the shadows. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and red that made the whole scene look like a movie set. There, Jerry whispered, pointing toward our back deck. 2 figures in your living room. Moving around like they're searching for something. I squinted through the gathering darkness. 2 shapes, definitely not Sarah. Too tall, too broad. And they were going through our things with systematic precision. Any idea what they're looking for? Jerry asked. I have no clue. I'm a software engineer. I write boring code for boring companies. The most classified thing in my house is Emma's diary. Jerry gave me a sharp look. What kind of code? Inventory management. Stock tracking. Database optimization. Nothing sensitive. For which companies? Mostly small retail chains. Some logistics firms. I paused, trying to remember. Actually, I did some contract work last month for a shipping company. Maritime something. They wanted a custom tracking system for high-value cargo. Jerry went very still. Maritime. David, what exactly did you track for them? Container shipments. Mostly routine stuff. Food products, electronics, textiles. I was starting to get a bad feeling. Why? Because 3 weeks ago, customs intercepted a container ship carrying $200 million worth of uncut diamonds. Diamonds that disappeared from evidence lockup 2 days later. Jerry's voice was grim. If your tracking system documented those diamonds, the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The late nights Sarah had been working. Uncle Rick's strange behavior. The surveillance on our house. They weren't after me, they were after the data I'd unknowingly collected. Jerry, I think I accidentally documented a smuggling operation. And I think they know you know. My radio crackled. Emma's voice, tight with fear. Daddy, someone's coming toward the truck. Jerry was already moving, pulling me back toward the street. Emma, drive away. Now. Go to the police station and wait for us there. I can't drive. Yes, you can, sweetheart. Put the truck in drive and press the gas pedal gently. There was a pause, then the sound of an engine starting. Emma's voice came through static. It's working. But Daddy, there are more cars coming. Lots of them. We reached the street just in time to see Jerry's pickup truck lurching down Oak Street with my 7-year-old daughter behind the wheel. Behind her, 2 black sedans were giving chase. She's heading for the police station, Jerry said, pulling out his phone. But those cars are going to catch her first. That's when Emma proved she was definitely my daughter. Instead of driving straight to the police station, she took a hard right into the Walmart parking lot. The pickup truck bounced over the curb and came to a stop near the store entrance, right under the bright security lights where dozens of cameras could record everything. The black sedans had no choice but to drive past, unable to do anything suspicious in such a public place. Smart kid, Jerry muttered with admiration. She just turned a kidnapping into a public relations disaster. My radio crackled again. Daddy? I'm okay. There are lots of people here. The bad men drove away. Stay right there, Emma. Don't move until you see us. Jerry and I ran through the neighborhood toward Walmart, both of us too old to be sprinting like teenagers but too panicked to care. When we reached the parking lot, Emma was standing beside the truck, surrounded by curious shoppers and 2 store security guards. Is this your daughter, sir? One of the guards asked. Yes. There was an emergency at home. She had to drive here. The guard looked skeptical until Jerry flashed his old badge. Police emergency, he said smoothly. We need to get these civilians to safety. Within minutes, we were back in the truck with Emma buckled safely between us. Jerry was already on his phone with someone he referred to only as Rodriguez. We need a safe house, he was saying. Family of 3, federal situation, possible organized crime connections. A pause. Yeah, I'll vouch for them. Kid's got abilities we might need. When he hung up, I asked, abilities? Your daughter just outmaneuvered a professional extraction team using a pickup truck in a Walmart parking lot. That's not normal 7-year-old thinking. Emma was quiet for most of the drive to whatever safe house Jerry had arranged. But as we pulled into the driveway of a nondescript ranch house in a suburb I didn't recognize, she spoke up. Daddy? The lady they have at our house. She's going to call you soon. What lady? The one pretending to be Mommy. Before I could ask more questions, my phone rang. Sarah's number. I looked at Jerry, who nodded. Answer it. But put it on speaker. David? Where are you? Sarah's voice, but something was off. The cadence was wrong, like someone reading lines they'd rehearsed but didn't quite understand. "I'm safe," I said carefully. "Safe from what?" "David, you're scaring me. Come home so we can talk about this." Emma shook her head violently. She held up a piece of paper with something written in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. "Ask her about the strawberry birthmark." Sarah had a small strawberry birthmark on her left shoulder blade. Something only I would know. "Sarah, how's your shoulder feeling? You mentioned it was bothering you this morning." There was a pause. "Too long. It's fine. Much better. David, please come home." Sarah had never mentioned her shoulder bothering her. Ever. Because the birthmark was just a birthmark, it had never caused her any discomfort. "Where's Emma?" the fake Sarah asked. "She's with me. Bring her home. She needs her dinner." Emma held up another note. "I already ate at Grandma's." "She already ate at Mom's," I said. Another pause. "Of course. I forgot. David, I'm worried about you. You're not acting like yourself." Jerry was frantically writing something on his own piece of paper. "Keep her talking. Rodriguez is tracing the call." "Sarah, do you remember our first date?" "Of course I do. We went to that Italian place." "Wrong. Our first date was mini golf followed by ice cream. We'd never been to an Italian place together on our first date. That was our 5th date, when I finally worked up the courage to take her somewhere that required reservations." "Right," I said. "The Italian place. What was the name again?" Antonio's?" "There was no Antonio's. I was talking to someone who had studied Sarah's life but didn't know the intimate details. Someone who could look like her, sound like her, but couldn't be her." "I'll be home soon," I lied. "Good. We'll be waiting." "We'll be waiting. Not I'll be waiting. We." After I hung up, Jerry's phone buzzed. He listened to someone for a few minutes, occasionally grunting acknowledgement. "Rodriguez traced the call," he said finally. "It's coming from your house, but there are at least 4 different phones active in there. Professional team, probably foreign intelligence or high-end mercenaries." "What do they want?" "The shipping data you compiled. Specifically, any information about container shipment routes in the last month." I thought back to the maritime company contract. I documented everything: arrival times, cargo manifests, route deviations. It was all just routine database work. "David," Jerry said quietly, "you accidentally created a map of an international smuggling operation. Those diamonds that went missing? Your data probably shows exactly how they entered the country and where they went next." Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy? The real mommy is in a place with numbers on the walls." Both Jerry and I stared at her. "Numbers?" "Like a countdown. Starting at 72. Jerry's face went pale. "Container yard. They're keeping her in a shipping container." He was already dialing his phone. "Rodriguez? We need a tactical team at the Port Authority. Now." The next few hours blurred together like a fever dream. Jerry's friend Rodriguez turned out to be FBI, and within an hour our quiet suburban crisis had escalated into a federal operation. Emma and I were moved to a secure location while teams of agents descended on both our house and the shipping yard. Emma spent the time drawing more of her strange geometric patterns, occasionally stopping to make cryptic announcements like they found the blue container or "Mommy's scared but okay." Each time, Rodriguez would get a radio call confirming exactly what she'd said. "How does she know?" he asked me during one of these moments. "I have no idea. This all started today. Kids sometimes develop unusual sensitivities during traumatic events," Rodriguez said. "Enhanced intuition, pattern recognition, even precognitive flashes. Usually temporary. Usually? Sometimes the abilities stick around." He watched Emma carefully fold one of her drawings into a paper airplane. "Have you noticed anything else unusual about her lately?" I thought about it. "She's been having very vivid dreams. And sometimes she knows who's calling before I answer the phone." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "We might want to have her evaluated by our specialists." "Evaluated for what?" "To see if this is trauma-induced hypersensitivity or something more permanent." Around midnight, Rodriguez got the call we'd been waiting for. "They found your wife," he said. "Dehydrated and scared, but unharmed. She's being taken to the hospital for observation." Emma looked up from her drawings. "She's okay, Daddy. But she's going to have bad dreams for a while." The fake Sarah and her team had been captured at our house. Turned out they were part of an international art and antiquities smuggling ring that had branched out into conflict diamonds. My shipping database had inadvertently documented their entire East Coast operation. "The woman impersonating your wife is actually quite impressive," Rodriguez told me later. "Professional actress, trained in vocal mimicry and behavioral modeling. If your daughter hadn't tipped you off." He didn't need to finish. "If Emma hadn't made that impossible phone call, I would have walked into a trap. Sarah and I would both be dead, and Emma would be." I didn't want to think about what they would have done to Emma. 3 months later, I was sitting in our living room, our real living room, with our real furniture and our real family pictures back on the walls, when Sarah brought up something that had been bothering her. David, I keep thinking about that night. How did Emma know to warn you? I'd been wondering the same thing. The FBI specialists had evaluated Emma and concluded that she'd experienced what they called acute stress-induced precognitive episodes. Basically, extreme fear had temporarily rewired her brain to pick up on patterns and probabilities that adults miss. Trauma can unlock strange abilities, I said, which was the official explanation we'd been given. But she called you from your own phone. How is that even possible? I didn't have an answer for that. None of the specialists did, either. The phone records showed the call happening, but there was no technical explanation for how Emma could have called my number from the same device she was using to make the call. Emma, now 8 and back to being a normal kid obsessed with cartoons and candy, had her own theory. I think I borrowed the call from later, she said matter-of-factly when we asked her about it. Like when you borrow sugar from the neighbors, except with time instead of sugar. Emma, that's not how time works. She shrugged. Maybe not usually. But that day was different. She was right about that. That day had been different. That day, my 7-year-old daughter had somehow reached across time to save my life with a phone call that shouldn't have been possible. The smuggling ring was dismantled. The fake Uncle Rick, whose real name was Victor something or other, was extradited to face charges in 3 different countries. The real Uncle Rick was found alive in a warehouse in Baltimore, drugged but unharmed. He had no memory of the past month, which the FBI said was probably a blessing. Sarah recovered from her ordeal, though she still checks all the locks twice before bed and insists on a security system that could protect Fort Knox. She's back to working normal hours and coming home smelling like her own perfume, which is a relief on multiple levels. As for Emma, she occasionally still demonstrates flashes of that uncanny knowledge. She'll know when someone's about to call, or she'll warn me about traffic jams before we encounter them. But nothing as dramatic as that first phone call. Sometimes I catch her drawing those geometric patterns, though she claims not to remember making them. The FBI kept copies of all her drawings from that night, and Rodriguez still calls occasionally to ask if she's shown any new abilities. I tell him no, because I want Emma to have a normal childhood. But the truth is, sometimes I'll find her staring out the window with that same intense focus she had that day, like she's seeing something the rest of us can't. Last week, she asked me if I remembered how to answer the emergency phone. What emergency phone, sweetheart? The one I'm going to call you on, she said, then went back to watching cartoons like she hadn't just sent chills down my spine. I keep my phone charged now. All the time. Just in case. Because if there's one thing I learned from this whole ordeal, it's that when your 7-year-old daughter tells you to get out of the house, you get out of the house. Even if, especially if, she's calling you from the same phone she's holding in her hands. Some rules don't make sense until they save your life. And some phone calls come from places that don't exist yet, carried by voices that know things they shouldn't know, warning you about dangers you can't see coming. I used to think time moved in one direction, predictable and linear. Now I know better. Now I know that love, the fierce, protective love of a child for her parent, can reach across impossible distances and bend reality itself. Emma saved my life with a phone call from the future. I still don't understand how, and I'm not sure I want to. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, especially when the answer might be more terrifying than the question. But I know this, if she ever calls me again, from any phone, at any time, telling me to get out, I'm not even going to ask questions. I'm just going to run. Which brings me to what happened 3 weeks ago. I was working late in my home office. Yes, we moved back into the same house because Sarah refused to let those criminals drive us away, when Emma appeared in my doorway wearing her pajamas and that expression. You know, the one that meant she was about to say something that would turn my world upside down. Daddy, you need to see something. She led me to her bedroom, where she'd been drawing again. But these weren't the geometric patterns from before. These were maps. Detailed, precise maps of places I'd never seen, with little X marks scattered across them like some kind of treasure hunt designed by a very disturbed pirate. Emma, where did you see these places? In my dreams. But they're not dreams, Daddy. They're memories that haven't happened yet. That phrase, memories that haven't happened yet, made my skin crawl in ways I can't adequately describe. It was like hearing someone casually mention they'd been chatting with their own ghost. Memories of what? She pointed to one of the X marks on what looked like a map of downtown Chicago. That's where the man with the broken smile is going to hurt people. What man? The one who thinks he's helping, but he's not. He's going to make a big mistake in. She paused, counting on her fingers. 17 days. I stared at the drawing. The level of detail was impossible for an 8-year-old. Street names were spelled correctly, building layouts were architecturally sound, and there were notations in what looked like a code I didn't recognize. Emma, how do you know these street names? The same way I knew you were in danger that day. It just comes to me, like remembering something I forgot. She picked up another drawing, this one showing what appeared to be the interior of a large building. This is where they're keeping the children. My blood turned to ice water. What children? The ones who got lost. Like I almost got lost. She looked up at me with those two knowing eyes. Daddy, we have to help them. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat in my office staring at her drawings spread across my desk. The rational part of my brain insisted this was just childhood imagination run wild, influenced by the trauma she'd experienced. Kids process scary experiences through play and art all the time. But the drawings were too detailed. Too accurate. And that phrase, memories that haven't happened yet, kept echoing in my mind. I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I called Rodriguez. David? It's past midnight. This better be important. Emma's having the episodes again. But different this time. There was a pause. Different how? I described the maps, the predictions, the reference to children being kept somewhere. Rodriguez listened without interruption, which somehow made it worse. If he'd laughed or dismissed it, I could have convinced myself I was overreacting. Can you scan the drawings and send them to me? He asked finally. You think there's something to this? David, your daughter predicted a federal smuggling operation with 98% accuracy. If she's drawing maps and talking about children in danger, I'm going to take it seriously. I spent the next hour scanning Emma's drawings and emailing them to Rodriguez. Each image looked more ominous on my computer screen, the X marks like wounds, the careful annotations like warnings written in a language only Emma understood. The next morning, Rodriguez called back. David, we need to talk. In person. Today. What did you find? The building in your daughter's drawing? It matches the layout of a warehouse we've been investigating. Part of a human trafficking operation we haven't been able to crack. The words hit me like a physical blow. Human trafficking. Children. Emma's innocent drawings suddenly felt like evidence from a crime scene. How could she possibly know about that? That's what we need to figure out. Can you bring her in for another evaluation? Emma was surprisingly calm about going back to the FBI office. She packed a small backpack with crayons, paper, and her stuffed elephant, like she was going on a field trip instead of a federal consultation. Will I have to draw more pictures? She asked during the drive. Maybe. Would that bother you? She considered this seriously. It's scary sometimes, seeing things that haven't happened. But if it helps people, then it's okay. The maturity in her voice broke my heart. 8 years old, and she was already carrying the weight of knowledge that grown adults couldn't handle. Dr. Sarah Chen, the FBI's specialist in what they called anomalous cognitive phenomena, met us in a room that looked more like a playroom than an interrogation chamber. Toys scattered around, bright colors on the walls, the kind of place designed to make children feel safe. Hello, Emma. I'm Dr. Chen. I'd like to talk to you about your drawings, if that's okay. Emma studied Dr. Chen's face with that intense focus. You're not pretending to be someone else, she announced, apparently satisfied. No, I'm not. Can you always tell when people are pretending? Usually. Sometimes it's harder with grown-ups because they're better at lying. Dr. Chen glanced at me with raised eyebrows. Emma, when you draw these pictures, how do you know what to draw? It's like watching a movie, but the movie is in my head and it's about things that are going to happen. Sometimes the movie is fuzzy, and sometimes it's very clear. Is the movie playing right now? Emma nodded. There's a lady with red hair who's very scared. She's in a room with no windows, and she can hear children crying through the walls. Dr. Chen went very still. Can you draw what you see? For the next hour, Emma drew with the focused intensity of someone much older. Her small hands moved quickly across the paper, creating images that were both childlike and disturbingly accurate. A woman tied to a chair. A hallway with numbered doors. A loading dock with specific truck license plates clearly visible. Emma, Dr. Chen said gently, do you know when these things are going to happen? Soon. Maybe tonight? The numbers on the wall keep changing. Dr. Chen excused herself to make a phone call. Through the glass window, I could see her speaking urgently to someone, occasionally gesturing toward Emma's drawings. Daddy, Emma said quietly, are we helping the scared lady? I think so, sweetheart. I hope so. Good. She has a little girl who misses her very much. 20 minutes later, Rodriguez burst into the room with 3 other agents I didn't recognize. They studied Emma's drawings with the intensity of generals planning a military campaign. Emma, Rodriguez said, kneeling down to her level, this is very important. Can you tell us exactly where this building is? Emma picked up a fresh piece of paper and began drawing a map with startling precision. Streets, intersections, even building numbers were marked with careful accuracy. It's near the big bridge with the green towers, she said, adding details as she drew. The building has a sign that says Metro Logistics, but that's not what they really do there. Rodriguez was already on his phone. We need surveillance on Metro Logistics, 1247 Industrial Boulevard. Possible trafficking operation in progress. Rodriguez, I said, what if she's wrong? What if this is just trauma-induced hallucination? Then we investigate a warehouse and find nothing, he replied. But if she's right. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Emma finished her map and held it out to Rodriguez. The lady with red hair is in room 7. But you have to hurry, because the man with the broken smile is going to move everyone tomorrow. Broken smile? Dr. Chen asked. Emma pointed to her own mouth. Like this. She stretched her lips into a grotesque grin that didn't reach her eyes. He thinks he's smiling, but it's wrong. Like he learned how to smile from watching other people but never felt happy himself. The accuracy of that description, a textbook description of a psychopath's emotional mimicry, sent chills through the room. Rodriguez was coordinating with his team when Emma tugged on my sleeve. Daddy, there's something else. Something worse. What do you mean? The man with the broken smile. He knows about me. He knows I can see things. She lowered her voice to a whisper. He's coming for us next. The room went dead silent. Rodriguez slowly put down his phone. Emma, how do you know he knows about you? Because in the movie in my head, I can see him looking at pictures of our house. And he's smiling his broken smile. That night, while Emma slept under FBI protection at a secure location, tactical teams surrounded Metro Logistics. The operation was swift and silent, until it wasn't. Rodriguez called me at 3 a.m. with an update that made my hand shake. We found 12 victims, including the woman with red hair. All alive, all going to be okay. His voice was grim. But David, we also found something else. A file cabinet full of surveillance photos. Your house, your family, Emma's school. This has been planned for weeks. Where's the man Emma described? Gone. Vanished. But he left something behind, a note addressed to the little girl who sees too much. I felt like someone had dumped ice water directly into my bloodstream. What did it say? I'll be seeing you soon, Emma. You and I have so much to discuss. When I told Emma about the note the next morning, she didn't seem surprised. If anything, she looked almost relieved. Now you believe me, she said simply. Emma, we're going to keep you safe. I promise. She shook her head sadly. Daddy, you can't promise that. Because in the movie in my head, he finds us anyway. When? Christmas Eve. He's going to come dressed like Santa Claus, but Santa doesn't have broken smiles. That was 8 weeks away. 8 weeks to find a man who could disappear like smoke, who knew Emma's abilities better than we did, who was smart enough to stay 3 steps ahead of federal agents. 8 weeks to figure out how to protect a child who could see the future but couldn't change it. Rodriguez assigned a full protection detail to our family. Our house became a fortress of surveillance equipment and armed agents who tried to look casual while scanning for threats that might not exist yet. Emma adapted to the protection with the same eerie calm she'd shown throughout this entire ordeal. She drew pictures of the agents, somehow knowing their real names even though they'd given her fake ones. She predicted when Rodriguez would call with updates, often answering my phone before it rang. Daddy, she said one evening while drawing another of her geometric patterns, what if seeing the future isn't a gift? What if it's a trap? What do you mean? What if the man with the broken smile can see the future too? What if he knows I can see him coming, and that's why he's not worried? The possibility hadn't occurred to me, but it made a horrible kind of sense. If Emma's abilities had been triggered by trauma, what kind of trauma might have created someone like her stalker? Emma, in your dreams about Christmas Eve, do you see how it ends? She paused in her drawing, her small hand hovering over the paper. I see 2 endings, Daddy. In one ending, the man with the broken smile takes me away, and you never see me again. In the other ending. What? In the other ending, I'm not me anymore. The chill those words sent through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It was the cold of deep space, of absolute zero, of hope dying. What do you mean, you're not you anymore? I mean I become like him. Someone who can see the future but uses it to hurt people instead of helping them. She looked up at me with eyes that seemed far too old. Daddy, what if the reason he wants me is because he's lonely? What if he's looking for someone like him? The idea that this monster might want to turn my daughter into another monster was so horrifying I couldn't process it. But Emma seemed to accept it as just another piece of information from her impossible movie screen of future memories. Rodriguez arrived an hour later with news that didn't improve my mood. We identified him, he said, spreading photos across our dining room table. Real name is Marcus Kane. Former military intelligence, discharged after psychological evaluation revealed severe antisocial tendencies and possible precognitive capabilities. Precognitive capabilities? Turns out the military has been studying people like Emma for decades. Kane was part of an experimental program before he went off the rails. Rodriguez picked up one of the photos, showing a man with hollow eyes and that same broken smile Emma had described. He's been using his abilities to stay ahead of law enforcement for 5 years. Always knows when we're coming. So how do we catch someone who can see us coming? Emma looked up from her drawing. You don't catch him, Daddy. You let him come to you. Absolutely not. It's the only way. Because in all the movies in my head, the only time he doesn't win is when I'm the one who chooses when and where we meet. Rodriguez and I exchanged glances. The idea of using an 8-year-old as bait was beyond consideration. But Emma was already drawing again, creating what looked like a floor plan of our house. Christmas Eve, she said without looking up. 7:43 p.m. He comes through the back door while everyone's watching the front. How do you know the exact time? Because that's when the movie always starts.